Hey Bears fans, what is the one word that comes to mind when you think about the Chicago Bears? A lot of frustration right now. Anger, maybe those are some good words. Depressed, frustrated, pay sucks, all in one word. What is the one word that comes to mind? Today's show, the theme is air out your grievances in the comment section. I want to see you guys lighten it up down there. After I post this video, I'll interact with you guys. So let's get the comments flowing and hey, got more rumors and news to get into, so let's jump on in. You're watching Chicago Bears now. I'm your host, Harrison Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at HGrahamNFL. A lot of you guys have been tweeting me after the Russell Wilson, Andy Dalton fallout. You can tweet me more thoughts over there, and I will respond to you guys on my Twitter page. Let's start with this one. Kyle Fuller, is he going to get cut or traded? That's the chatter right now. I think there's a pretty decent chance. Report coming from Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune is that they could trade Fuller or cut him as soon as today because his cap hit for 2020 is $20 million, and cutting him would save $11 million. Post-June 1 cut would be $14 million in savings, but they're going to have to make a decision very, very soon. And as we talked about on our cap cuts video a month or two ago, I told you guys this was a possibility. I like Kyle Fuller. He's a good player, but $20 million against the cap in a year in which the cap goes down, that's quite a bit for a guy who's good but not great. And that's what Kyle Fuller is, a really good player, but I wouldn't consider him a great player by any means. I'd call him a low-end number one corner at this point. He is a number one guy, but he's not a ball-hawking true number one guy. He's a lower-end number one corner, and $20 million is just not what you're getting when it comes to Kyle Fuller. I think, and we'll talk about Russell Wilson later in the show, I think Kyle Fuller was a player they would have traded to Seattle in a trade for Russell Wilson for this exact reason, because he simply is too expensive for where the Bears are when it comes to the salary cap. So I think there's a pretty good chance he gets cut or he gets traded. You, of course, could sign him to a contract extension, which could lower his cap number for this year, but hey, when you miss out on the big quarterback, is that even worth it? I'm not so sure that it is. What should the Bears do with Kyle Fuller? Type C for cut him, type T for trade him, type E for extend him. Ideally, you find a trade partner. I don't think you'd get that much for him considering his cap hit and contract situation. Andy's in the final year of his deal. Maybe you can get a fourth-round pick for him. Let me know what you guys think. What should the Bears do with Kyle Fuller? Now, I know times are tough right now when it comes to being a Chicago Bears fan, but hey, we're not going to check out like some of these other Bears YouTube channels. We're not going to stop making videos just because this front office can't get it done. YouTube.com/BearsNow. Hit that big red button and subscribe. You see it flashing on the bottom there. Share that link with a friend, and let's get more Bears fans in here because hey, you can't quit on your team. We're not gonna bandwagon. You guys can't bandwagon to another team. You got to stick with the Bears. So go ahead and get subscribed to Chicago Bears Now for videos every single day. Let's talk Russell Wilson Bears trade offer here on Bears Now by Chat Sports. The fallout after missing out on Russell Wilson is, well, apparently they made a big offer. Multiple reports coming out that Bears pushed hard. They made a big offer. Dan Patrick even took it to another level saying, hey, they offered 3 first-round picks and more assets. We'll show that exact trade that he heard from his sources that the Bears made in terms of trying to trade for Russell Wilson. As we previously discussed, obviously the Bears did not land Wilson. They ended up signing Andy Dalton as the Seahawks have ultimately decided to keep Russell Wilson. Now, Dan Patrick's reported trade was as follows. Russell Wilson to the Bears for 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starting players. He wasn't told who those players were. I think one of those guys was Kyle Fuller. Maybe Roquan Smith was the other guy. I don't believe it would have been Khalil Mack, but I'm guessing 2 defensive players. Perhaps Allen Robinson, but I don't think that really makes sense with the Seahawks wide receiver situation. I'm going to guess Fuller and Roquan Smith, which means that's a pretty good offer for Seattle, if we're being honest. 3 firsts, 2 legitimate starters, and a third-round pick for Russell Wilson, who's elite, but also is 32 years old. Would you have done this trade? Type Y for yes, type N for no. I absolutely would have, and I made that clear that the Bears should do everything they can to get a Russell Wilson, to get a Deshaun Watson. So I'm going to type my Y on this one. And look, I hate Ryan Pace as much as the next guy. Hate's a strong word. I dislike him as a GM. I think he has some assets and could be a good member in a front office. But in this case, you can't say Ryan Pace didn't try. If that reported offer is either close to what they tried to offer Seattle for him, that's a pretty good offer, man. 3 firsts, a third, and two starters, probably both on defense, which is what Seattle needs on that side of the ball. Can't say he didn't try, but I will say this. This is why he should have been fired. And let me further explain. What I mean by that is once you kept Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and they were going to enter this year on the hot seat, they weren't going to commit to a draft quarterback necessarily. Now, maybe that's where this shifts to now, but how do you end up with a guy like Andy Dalton? You keep a GM and a head coach on the hot seat because they'd rather have a veteran than go, bank on a drafted quarterback or something like that. I commend Pace for trying, but this is why he should have been fired. You could have tried this same trade with the new GM, and hey, if it doesn't work, okay, maybe you commit to a mini rebuild at that point. You can't rebuild with Ryan Pace. That's why he should have been fired. And you should have had an open mind entering this offseason of, hey, this could go one of two ways. We're either going to land Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, or we're going to commit to a bit of a rebuild. Now you're stuck. Now you're stuck if you're the Chicago Bears, and that's the worst place you can be if you are an NFL franchise. You're stuck in the middle because you have a decent defense, you have a good running game, and you have Andy Dalton now who is not very good, but he's not bad enough to go 3-13, 3-14 if there's a 17-game schedule this year, which is being reported. So you're in a bad spot, and that's why he should have been fired at the end of the day, but at least he tried to get Russell Wilson. What should be the Bears' next move? Where do they go from here? I think you have to look at the draft at this point. Do you trade Allen Robinson? We'll certainly explore that on a future video as well. Let me know. Comment below. What should be the Bears' next move, whether it's in free agency, the draft, at the quarterback position, elsewhere? I want to hear it from you guys. Where should Chicago turn to next? And more on this Russell Wilson stuff is that Adam Schefter is now teasing the Chicago Bears. Let me explain with this quote. Remember this, the Seahawks liked Andy Dalton when he was coming out in the 2011 draft, so if the Seahawks ever come around on trading Wilson, maybe Andy Dalton could be a chip in that trade. I don't think it's done. I don't think I'm ready to say Russell Wilson is a Seahawk. I want to see the draft come and go before I'm ready to say Russell Wilson will be a Seahawk this year. Please make it stop. I mean, you guys keep getting dangled by some of these national guys who are like, oh, it's not dead yet. It could happen. And, hey, we've talked about it on this show as a possibility, but never once did I say here and say, I think there's a really good chance Russell Wilson's going to end up on the Bears. I said I think it's possible. I think they're going to make an offer, and they're going to try to, which they did, right? That is exactly what happened. And now you got even Adam Schefter, which he's not reporting that, but he's saying, I wouldn't rule it out yet. It's just brutal to listen to if you're a Bears fan. Like, you got to accept reality. I'm not saying it's a 0% chance, but it's like a 1 to 2% chance. What is going to change for Seattle between yesterday and the NFL draft? I highly doubt a lot unless Russell Wilson publicly demands a trade like Deshaun Watson, which I don't really think he's going to go that route at the end of the day. So, yeah, not exactly what you want to hear if you are a Chicago Bears fan. How many games will the Bears win this year? Fill in the blank for me. Go ahead and predict it. 7? Go 7-10, 7-9, depending on how many games there are next year. 8-9 maybe. I don't think there's vast improvement with Andy Dalton. Let me know. How many games will the Bears win in 2021? Today's show is presented by BetRivers. Go to chatsports.com/BetIL or chatsports.com/BetIN, depending on if you're in Indiana or in Illinois. Make some money with BetRivers on March Madness. Loyola Chicago, they're back. Bet on them in the tournament or the Fighting Illini as well. They're the second best odds to cut down the nets in the month of April. March Madness is here. I'm excited. Fill out a bracket, but also place some bets on some games and make some money. Chatsports.com/BetIN for you Indiana folks. Chatsports.com/BetIL if you are in the state of Illinois. Let's talk more about Andy Dalton. Obviously, he was the the result of not trading for Russell Wilson. He signs the 1-year deal up to $13 million, as we broke down for you guys on yesterday's show. Looks like he's going to be the starter. I mean, that's the reality of the Chicago Bears at this point, and that's quite the fall from flirting with a Russell Wilson trade, but this is what you end up with, and Andy Dalton is not a player we talked about a lot leading up to this, because I just didn't think he was really a realistic option. Like, I did not think that if they missed out on Wilson or Watson that they would circle back to Andy Dalton. This makes no sense. And I want to expand on, because we kind of briefly talked about it yesterday on the breaking news video when they signed Dalton, but this makes no sense because this is a very slight upgrade, in my opinion, from Nick Foles. And you don't slightly upgrade and pay that person $10 million of a base salary and up to $13 million. Look, maybe Andy Dalton comes in here, balls out, and leads this team to an 11-win season. But I doubt it. There's no indication that he's going to be able to do that. He played 8 or 9 games with Dallas last year, and granted, a lot of their offensive line was banged up, but that receiving core of CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup is pretty darn good, and he wasn't that effective at the end of the day. So, look, I don't get this move. If you swung and missed on a guy, keep Nick Foles and go draft a quarterback. That's your quarterback room. Now you got Dalton and Foles, and now there's chatter, they'll trade Nick Foles, they'll save a couple million against the cap. Okay, then what? Like, so what? It's not a big enough difference to go from Foles to Dalton at the end of the day. I still think you should check out and see what's going on in the draft. I don't really get the Dalton move. You have a bridge quarterback in Nick Foles. This is just a slightly better bridge quarterback. Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, maybe Dalton wins you an extra game. At the end of the day, it's not the difference in making a deep playoff run for either of these two guys. And then this one really got me as well. Jeff Dickerson tweeted this one out yesterday. We don't need the time there. It was on Tuesday. From the Bears' perspective, they say they were drawn to Andy Dalton's experience, leadership, accuracy, durability, and decision-making. Prior relationship with Bill Lazor helps too. Ah, yes. You had to bring in AD because of the Bill Lazor connection. He was the quarterback's coach, the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, and Dalton had a couple of decent years with him in 2016 and 17. So what? I mean, come on. This is such a PR BS release. Oh, yeah, Bill Lazor. He knows Andy very well. You know who knew Nick Foles last year? John DeFilippo. How did that work out? Not very well at the end of the day. So I don't think this makes any sense. I'll be pulling for Andy Dalton. He went to my alma mater, TCU. I hope he plays well, but I'm not going to spew things that aren't true and think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback next year, because that's just not what he is at this point in his career. So how excited are you? If you can't tell, I'm at about a 1.5. Scale it from 1 to 10. How excited are you about Andy Dalton? 10 being fired up. This guy's going to lead us to the Super Bowl. 1 being, yeah, this team sucks and the Bears are cursed. Let me know, 1 to 10, and we'll see you next time.